Uh, Panel member is Mr. Alan Bell. He's gonna introduce himself.
Good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. And I'd like to thank CABC for giving me the opportunity to talk to you today. If you look at my first slide, you will see that trying to come up with an explanation to describe the security situation in Afghanistan is not very easy. So I came up with fact or fiction. A lot of people's interpretation of what's going on in Afghanistan is gleaned from the media. The media, both from a military perspective and also from a general media perspective. And people who watch the media on a regular basis, particularly here in North America, we are swayed considerably by what is said and all the activities that are taking place in Afghanistan at the moment. And I've been asked many times, why should we go to Afghanistan and do business with all the problems that are going on? Well, what we try to do is try to alleviate some of those concerns and explain that Afghanistan is a fairly large country. And whilst there's some areas within Afghanistan where it is very dangerous, there are also other areas where it is reasonably safe to conduct business operations. And it's about this I'd like to talk for the next 10 or 15 minutes. Just a little bit about myself. I spent 24 years in British Special Forces. I was also very fortunate to spend my last tour with British Special Forces was actually in Afghanistan, fighting the Russians with the Mujahideen. I was in Afghanistan in the mountains for nearly 7 months with the Mujahideen. I learned a great respect for the bravery of the people I was fighting with, and this has followed on during the last 3 years that we've been operating in Afghanistan. When we originally went into Afghanistan as a company, we were invited in by the government to talk about certain projects that the government was looking at. We didn't just arrive and start looking for work, etc., because primarily Globe Risk is a security consulting company and not a manpower company. So that was the reason why we went to Afghanistan. The majority of the companies that we have now were set up originally to provide security resources and services to the mining and natural resource companies throughout the world. And in fact, until 9/11, we did not even work in North America. Most of our work centered in Africa and Central and South America. Some of our deployments at the moment. We have a number of operational deployments in Afghanistan. We currently protect 2 US forward operating bases and 1 Canadian forward operating base. We have 4 counter-surveillance teams in Kabul and 2 counter-surveillance teams in Kandahar. These counter-surveillance teams are Afghan nationals, and what they are in fact they're looking for insurgents planning attacks, potential car bombers, and we have been told that in the last 4 months these teams have prevented 3 or 4 car bombings from actually taking place in Kabul. We have a quick reaction force in Kabul. This is a group of armed, once again, Afghan nationals who have been highly trained, and when we have any of our clients that get into any difficulty in the Kabul area, we dispatch these individuals to help secure them and move them into a safe location. We also provide the main security force for a major Canadian satellite tracking company operating in Kabul, but operating in most of the provinces throughout Afghanistan. And finally, we provide protective service details for individuals and groups moving around Afghanistan conducting daily business. We also have some deployments in Iraq. Most of these are providing PSD services and security consulting services, once again aimed at the oil industry and in particular the oil pipelines in Iraq. With us having a grounding in mining and natural resource, we are also supporting operations in a number of countries in Africa and South America at this time. So the situation. There's several issues that we have to look at. One is, I call it the fluid security situation in Afghanistan. The situation varies over the last couple of months. It's got a lot different than it was 4 months ago, particularly in the south of the country, and there have been numerous problems in other parts of the country. However, the fact that these security problems are fluid should not deter businesses who want to go and sample the riches, particularly the natural resource riches within Afghanistan today, as well as other companies looking at other opportunities in Afghanistan. Long-term security is obviously going to be key to this type of exploration into Afghanistan, and we believe that with the right security organization, there is a pretty good chance that you will be successful operating in Afghanistan until the situation alleviates itself and becomes less hostile, particularly, as I said, in the south. Afghanistan, as the majority of people who are sitting here today know, is a very vast country. And I'm not about to start talking about where it's hostile and where it's not hostile. Let's just say there are certain parts of Afghanistan that you shouldn't go to, and there's certain parts of Afghanistan that you would welcome to go to meet the people, understand the culture, and look at the country as the country is in these other areas. My company's approach is to analyze every infrastructure security situation and then develop a plan to enable that company, whether it's an international company or it's an Afghan company, to be able to operate unimpeded with all the problems that are occurring today in Afghanistan. Now, this is not easy, as I said, in a very fluid security situation. But we found over the last 3 years, once we settle into the routine, once we start our operations, we tend to get a good handle on what is happening. We get intelligence from various different organizations, but primarily from Afghan locals who work with us. They seem to know what's going on in their own areas, which provide that information which we can then provide to our particular clients operating in that region. There are challenges operating in Afghanistan, and I'm not going to stand here and tell you all is nice and green and rosy in the garden, because it isn't. But as I said, with the right plan, you know exactly what you're going to do. You're advised by the right people. There is no reason why any type of business should be procured in Afghanistan and should be gone after within Afghanistan. What we try to do, as I've said, our strategy is to provide a security blanket around the organization or the individuals who travel to Afghanistan to look for potential business opportunities. If it's a natural resource company, obviously that means traveling outside the urban centers of Afghanistan, into the mountains, into the deserts, to carry out exploration operations. Once again, we've been doing this long before 9/11, long before the Taliban were removed from Afghanistan, and this just is a carryover. This is not a result of what is happening in the world today. This has been a project and a problem that's been going on for many years. So what do companies need before they're actually looking at going to do business in Afghanistan? Well, the primary requirement is they need accurate, relevant, timely, and current security information. You can't get this information by watching CNN. You can't get this information by surfing the internet. You need to have people on the ground that know exactly what the problems are and what they can do to help you before you even step on the plane and fly on the long trek to Dubai and then into Kabul or into Kandahar. We always carry out a threat risk vulnerability assessment where we assess all the risk. And obviously this type of risk assessment is going to be dependent on the type of business that the company is looking at pursuing. Obviously, if it's from a financial perspective, most of the meetings can probably be conducted in one of the main urban centers. If you are working in other areas, you may have to go outside these urban centers. Some of the areas outside may be a little bit more dangerous than other areas. Obviously, when you're traveling out to these areas, you need some type of security with individuals who have been trained to deal with that type of situation. We currently retain the services of about 250 Afghan nationals who have all undergone a significant amount of training in this field. They're well equipped. And in fact, since we started working over there, we have never ever lost anybody, and we've never had anybody leave the company while we've been working over there. When we have had people slightly injured because of situations from our operations in southern Afghanistan, those individuals want to get back into the field as quickly as possible. So it's not a case of using their injury as an impediment to doing their job. Most people come back within 24 hours and they are keen to do so. Once the initial planning stages have been completed, obviously the business, whatever that business is, will come back to whichever country they are operating from to sit down and figure out how they're going to commence to do business in Afghanistan. This may be a simple process, or it may be a long, drawn-out process. Whatever it is, we will always be available to assist those companies with either with information, security protection, a place to live. We have numerous villas in Kabul, and we also have an office in Kandahar airfield. Obviously, when you are down south, if you're looking at doing business down south, that is a little bit more trickier, and we have to put certain contingencies in place before you actually travel to that part of the country. So why do you want to go to Afghanistan? Well, the speakers before me and during the introduction, they've all said the riches that await companies to work in Afghanistan. It is a growing country at this particular moment. The only problem is, as you're well aware, is the fact the insurgency situation. It's not getting any better at this particular moment in time, but as I said, I've advised many companies during the last 3 years of the benefits of just going out, taking a look, and seeing what they can do, what they can achieve within Afghanistan itself, and not be deterred by the media, and not be deterred by what they think is the problem in Afghanistan. Some of the various different services that can be provided for companies who are looking at working in Afghanistan, I'm not going to read them all. Basically, we can... A lot of the service that we provide can either be dialed up or dialed down depending on which part of the country you want to go to. One of the most important things you need, no matter what your business is a security plan. You need to be able to know what happens if something goes wrong. If someone is injured, how are you going to get those people out of that country? This can be arranged from the day you arrive in Kabul to the day you leave. It can all be dealt with, it can all be sorted out for you, it's all planned for, so there is absolutely no problems when you're actually operating in Afghanistan or taking a look at business opportunities. Some of the operational support that we can provide: security management, guard force management, a trained guard force. All our security personnel are Afghan nationals, all of them. We have a couple of expatriate managers, but most of our manpower is all Afghan. One of the first things we went into Afghanistan to discuss with the government was the setting up of an Afghan security training facility in Kabul. Certain members of the government wanted to make sure that they didn't have to rely on the private security, foreign private security companies that are currently operating in Afghanistan indefinitely. So what we were requested to do was set up a parallel security infrastructure in Kabul, which would be completely administered and discharged by Afghan nationals. Unfortunately, as a result of that requirement, we came back to Canada. We went to a couple of government agencies, presented the business plan, and the decision was made not to finance this particular project, which was a great shame, considering that our government was saying quite considerably in front of the media that a lot of our rebuilding progress is being delayed because of lack of security. And in fact, we offered a security option using local Afghan resources. Some of the typical planning errors that companies make when they go there: they think they can land in Kabul, they can just go wherever they like. They don't realize that there's certain nuances that have to be taken care of, otherwise their safety could be at risk. These are some of the things that we try to make sure that we address with them before they get on the plane. It's no good going somewhere with your hands over your eyes and thinking, well, everything will be okay in the day. We've learned from experience, particularly in other countries around the world, that you can't do that. And this is what we try to bring to a client. This is not a time to ask questions. I believe once we have finished, we will be answering questions. The panel will be. As I said, we have 2 offices. We have one in Kabul and we have one in Kandahar. And as I said, Afghanistan is a developing country, and I, for one, will do what I can to help the Afghanistan government and help the CBAC to generate interest in Afghanistan by giving potential clients, potential companies, a up-to-date briefing on security, which is happening as of today. Thank you very much.
As you heard, open, insightful, and listen to the review and information. Now it's time to make some question if you have. Thank you.
This has been an issue, of course, throughout the world where companies from the outside come into a country and exploit the resources, and many of the people that live in the area don't benefit as much as they could. And I'm wondering what has been done there with the law of Afghanistan to ensure that the wealth of Afghanistan stays in Afghanistan.
Really? Okay. Well, when it comes to mining, there is a new law, and it has a royalty structure. I can send you the detail of the law perhaps later on. But when it comes to the capital overall, we have no limitation on the repatriation of capital or repatriation of profit of the companies. But with particularly in the mining sector, we have detailed structures, and I can I can send that to you if you give me a card.
Any other questions?
Okay, I just would like to, I think. Is this working?
Hello?
Hello? Hello? I think I'll just add to Mr. Akbar's information. There is, he's right, there is a law on royalty. There is detailed information as far as the wealth of Afghanistan is concerned. Is well structured, and there is royalty on the mines, especially in Afghanistan.
Hello, my name is Yar Taraki. Do you hear me? Yar Taraki from Prop Global and Prop Canada. I have a question for Mr. Alan Bell. From what I see, and I checked your website here in my laptop, you're basically doing the security work, the job that the Minister of Defense and Minister of Interior of Afghanistan is supposed to do. My question is to you, what kind of licensing procedures you have gone through? Are you licensed to provide this kind of securities? And if you're dealing with local intruders, how you deal with them? What is your relationship with the law enforcement agencies in Afghanistan? And the second question is, why your office is in Kandahar airfield? Why not in the city of Kandahar?
The first question, we are fully licensed to operate as a security entity in Afghanistan. There's currently approximately 78 security companies operating in Afghanistan, of which 22 have been duly licensed as of about a month ago. The rest are operating illegally. And at this moment in time, the Afghanistan government cannot really control who's licensed and who isn't, particularly outside the particularly outside the Kabul area. In terms of why are we in Kandahar airfield, we moved to Kandahar airfield 2 years ago. We were given space in Kandahar airfield to build our assets up. living outside Kandahar, we live in three forward operating bases. One in Hemling province, which is a very heavy Taliban infiltrated area. One of our locations is near the dam, the Doha Dam, at another FOB, and one of our other FOBs is in the same region as that. In terms of operating with local police forces in Kabul, we operate with them and ISF forces on a regular basis. The police in Kandahar, we have very little interaction with them based on the fact of where we are located. We do deal with other government agencies in terms of who we are, what we're doing, and we are firmly fighting to ascertain the situation whereby all security forces will be registered. All security forces, all private security forces, will undergo certain training, which has been authorized by the Afghanistan government, because at this particular moment in time, there's so many Afghan companies which haven't had the training, they're not providing the services that's required, they haven't had the training that's been required, and we are trying to change this by providing this training to various different entities. That was the reason why we were invited by the Afghanistan government to set up an Afghanistan training school. Unfortunately, as I said, that never transpired, so we're trying to do it from the other way. Did I answer all your questions?
Small part. What do you do when you face intruders, people who are criminals or Taliban? How you deal with them? Do you deal with them, or do you hand them over to the Afghanistan government?
No, we are providing static security of forward operating bases. 3 of those operating bases are attacked by the Taliban on a regular basis, and we assist the military forces of those 3 forward operating bases to defend that base. We also, in one of our US forward operating bases we are working from, we have a forward observation post, which used to be an Afghan police post. Unfortunately, the Taliban attacked it so many times that the Afghan police wouldn't stay there. It was important that it was manned, primarily because it gave early warning of Taliban movement in the area. And we have 15 Afghan security people with an expatriate manager, Canadian expatriate manager, manning that observation post, and they have been for nearly 6 months now. In Kabul, it is slightly different, with it being the capital. We tend to interact on a regular basis with the Afghanistan police as a result of the work that we do when we're moving the satellite communication technicians around Kabul, when they're going into the various different embassies and consulates to service the satellite equipment. But as I said, all our company weapons, all our company personnel, both Afghan and expatriate, are all duly licensed under existing Afghanistan law.
Maybe I can touch a little bit on this. There are about 63 security companies registered with the Ministry of Interior. I think it's about 59 or 60 companies registered with Afghanistan Investment Support Agency. So you can say that up to 63 licenses have been given to these security companies. Some of them are foreign, some of them are Afghan national security companies. Right now, we are not issuing license for security services because the government of Afghanistan thinks that we should be cautious about increasing the number of private security companies. Therefore, they are under, there is a new law that came out on private security companies, and I guess it's still in the parliament. It is regulated in that law, and I think it's up to the government. I mean, there is no discrimination between the Afghan or the foreign security company, or I mean, it's the security services. It is a sector for investment, and therefore I don't believe that they are taking the job of the national police or the army. It is a business, and they are there to do business.
If there are not any more questions, oh, we have a question.
My question is actually has two aspects. One of them is related to if there are any regulations in relation to a sustainable growth in Afghanistan so that the environment will not be damaged. As we see currently, the global market, the global situation is so bad. It is because the current growth in the international market is not sustainable. And whether there have been any kind of measures or mechanism put in place to control the growth of businesses, investment, economy, mining, whatever you call it, economic growth that can be sustainable in the long term. The other aspect is the regulation that Mr. Akbar mentioned in relation to the freedom that is given to foreign investment there. And I wanted to know if there is any difference between this regulation and what Paul Bremer introduced into Iraq. Because currently most of the people think that the regulations that were introduced into Iraq was just to loot the country by foreign investors. Whether there is any kind of control in that respect on foreign investment in Afghanistan. Thank you very much.
Good questions. Well, with respect to sustainability of the regulations, I think a number of laws came out, and these are quite conducive. What we have issues with, I think it would be a gradual development of the implementation of those laws. The laws are quite friendly and good laws. So we need to make progress in the implementation. Are we successful by 90%, 80%, or how we can develop it further? With respect to the prescriptions of Paul Bremer, I can tell you that the investors go where the profit is. And you have to have a conducive environment for investment. You cannot push people to come to your country and invest. So you have to provide the environment. You have to make sure security is improved. You have to make sure you have incentives. You have regulatory incentives, meaning you have laws that the investors feel comfortable. You have the infrastructure, you have energy. So in the meantime, there is a global competition over FDI, foreign direct investment. The competition is that certain countries offer tax exemptions. Certain countries offer free industrial zones, and they compete over how best they offer to those investors. And therefore, foreign companies go where they think it's a good environment for business. But in the meantime, we used to have 8 years, 6 years, and 4 years, 3 types of tax exemptions for the countries that the president abolished 3 years ago, which was not a predictable thing. I mean, once it is in the law, once we promised this to investors, it should have been the case until it was finished. But President Karzai, he said it was not the time to give these exemptions, so he abolished them. The new law came. But the investment law of Afghanistan has gone back to the parliament. I think this time it will have incentives. Also, industrial support mechanism, good support mechanism for industrialists in Afghanistan. Thank you.
We have time just for 2 more questions before we go for a break. We also have set up sign-up sheets outside for a one-on-one meeting, and I'm going to just mention the names of the people that we have set up these sign-up sheets for. They are going to be for Mr. Bayat, Mr. Habibullah Qadiri, Mr. Ubaidullah Sadr Khail, Ms. Corey McDougall, Mr. Nasim Akbar, Mr. Ranjan Banerjee, and Mr. Aziz Amiri. We're going to have table numbers set up, which we have already put the numbers on the tables. We're going to have a one-on-one meeting with them, and we'll also go for a break and reconvene at 7 o'clock. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Fred Harris, and I work in the field of human rights. I'm not associated with any particular organization. I just think it's important that we get the basic understandings of human rights, like the right to education, the right to equality before the law, and no discrimination, and this sort of thing, known to people all over the world. And particularly, I've been doing some actions in Afghanistan on this. I'd like to start off by saying I really applaud what you're doing here, because I can think of nothing more important than bringing about an atmosphere where there's safe and expanding business and flourishing and prospering is going on all over the country, because that will solve so many of the problems that are going on. I've made several trips myself to Afghanistan, and I've seen these things developing, and it's really wonderful to see. I would like to particularly applaud, well, I'd like to say this, that when I came to Afghanistan, I brought some human rights videos, and the one person who really saw the need for this in the country was Mr. Bayat, and through his generosity we were able to start airing them on Ariana TV, and they've been airing for the last year. The applause really goes to Mr. Bayat, because he saw what this could do, and he immediately ordered that it occur. And I really thank you very much, sir, for taking that action. My question, finally getting to the question here, is I'd like to know what the members of the panel perceive, how they see the relationship of human rights in creating a proper business atmosphere, because I know the more human rights we get going, the less we'll have to need Mr. Bell's services, I'm sorry to say that, you will be able to reduce the security, the need for major security, the more we raise enlightenment in this sector. So I'd like to hear from the panel on what they think, how the relationship goes between the development of business and the development of human rights in the country as well.
Well, I think it's quite a symbiotic relationship. I think the more security we have and the more measures and efforts we have for improving security and stabilizing the country, there will be more economic development, there will be more economic activities, and there will be more economic and the social development front in the human right. I think the more, I can say that the more security, the more stability, the more human right in the country. So that's the relation I see.
From my perspective, one of the reasons, as I said during my my overview, was the fact that we went to Afghanistan not to replace Afghanistan infrastructure with foreign private security contractors. That was not the aim. The aim was to go over there, set up an Afghanistan training school to enable the Afghanistan people to be able to conduct their own security, and then slowly but surely phase out all foreign security companies where possible. Obviously, some of those private security companies are operating for governments, and that's going to take a while before they will be phased out. But to set up an infrastructure, an Afghan security infrastructure to parallel what is out there now, with the intention in 1, 2, 5, 10 years' time, all private security companies will have left. There will be a well-trained, well-organized Afghanistan security infrastructure ready to take over from all the other institutions, and that does not include the police and the military. This is as a private security operation here in North America or any other country. The other thing is about human rights. One of the most important things that we teach our Afghan employees, we have a day on human rights as part of our 4-week training program, where we teach all our Afghan employees about human rights, the respecting of human rights, and how they can do that. And I think we probably show one of the videos from your organization, because I do know we have videos showing human rights. So I think security, unfortunately, it's very difficult to do anything, whether you're in business, whether you're an NGO, or whether you're just doing whatever you're doing in Afghanistan. At the moment, it is easy for me to say that you need security in everything you do. We are not in the business of providing security per se. We are in the business of providing security services. And if we can get an infrastructure in place to enable the Afghan people to take over that responsibility, the way they're taking over from the military and the way they're taking over from the police are taking over, I think we will establish the human rights factors and all the other factors that are required. And that is really the only way. If you take away security from the equation, it will be great, it will be a wonderful country. And I think we all agree this isn't going to happen for quite a few years, but we can do what we can to push it in that direction.
Why there's something wrong with, anyway, I think there is a strong relation between human rights and security, because human rights means the right to be educated, the right to speak, the right to take, one's right, the right to vote. All these things means finally is giving justice to the people of that country. I think if you give justice to the people of that country, means automatically the people of that country will be content, and there will be peace and security. And if you don't give justice to the people of a country, certainly then the people would not be happy. Whether it's with the government or with any institution. So I think these are small things sometimes, but makes a lot of difference. As Mr. Harris said, right of education. Now, everyone should have the right. Everyone have the right to go to school. Everyone has the right to speak up. Everyone has the right to say if there is injustice happening to that person. The right to vote. I think all these things are very good instruments, especially if we go deep into these human rights instruments, and they make a lot of difference in bringing peace and stability, and bringing cooperation of the common man with the government. Thank you.
We have one more question, and this will be the last question for the evening, as we will also have the one-on-one meetings.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming in who's here from outside of Toronto and within Toronto as well. My question is kind of twofold. I wanted to know, do you find that there's more foreign investment in Afghanistan than there is actual Afghan investment coming in from Afghans outside of the country? And if so, is there any incentives being offered to Afghans outside of the country to invest their resources as a means of getting into the country? And the reason I ask is because I know that there's a lot of outside countries in Afghanistan right now, and if there is a means of investment for them in the country, I'm sure they'd be first to see it. And secondly, people who are Afghan outside of the country, I'm sure their pool of resources is not sufficient for them to come and compete with foreign interests. So what kind of incentives are you offering, if any at all? Thanks.
I guess that's what I would be answering. 20% of the total investment in Afghanistan is foreign investment. And by saying foreign investment, you can also count the Afghan diaspora into that. Before I said that in the investment law, there will be a good structure for a business environment. And this will be seen in the coming months. But right now we do have support services for the businesses. We do have before, during, and after aftercare service for investments, though we have our limitations also in Afghanistan. For example, industrial park, we started it 3 years ago, and now we are doing really well in implementation of those industrial parks. We built 3, one in Mazar Sharif, Kandahar, and Kabul. And last year, actually this year, we started in February a big industrial park, 1,000 jarib of land in Jalalabad. It's under construction. That means investors coming into Afghanistan, we will have land for their investments in the industries. We have another industrial zone in Kamari of Kabul, which is east of Kabul. We are planning to, right now we are doing a feasibility in Kunduz province and Khost province for industrial development. We would like to see in the new law a good industrial support mechanism. Though we have the tax structure in Afghanistan is 20%, which is the lowest tax rate in the region. And we are trying to push this with the government. Afghanistan Investment Support Agency, ISA, has a policy impact in the government. We have the High Commission on Investment that includes 8 ministers of the cabinet. And once we realize that there is an issue in the private sector, we want to raise it. Once it's raised, seriously, it's taken into consideration by those ministers. And if there are still problems, it goes directly to the president. That's the structure that we have for lobbying for the private sector. The tariffs on the machinery, we have removed that right now. The raw material, there is no tax on it. So we are doing our best to make sure that we stay business friendly, and we stay, we provide incentives over time.
I'd like to thank our panelists, everyone, His Excellency Mr. Qadri, Mr. Nasim Akbar, Mr. Farmand, Mr. Alan Bell, Mr. Sadr Khil, and Mr. Zikriya Khan Zikriya for sitting in the panels and providing us very insightful information about doing business in Afghanistan and the future of Afghanistan, which I believe was pretty insightful for everybody. We are going to take a break at the moment. However, at the same time, we do have a one-on-one session set up, which everybody should hopefully would have signed by now, on a 5-minute per person basis. We're going to reconvene at 7 o'clock for our evening and gala dinner. In the meantime, you're more than welcome to have a one-on-one networking with each other outside of this hall. And also, again, we have our sponsors, Insurance Corporation of Afghanistan, the Bayat Foundation, Ariana Television Network, Afghan Wireless Telecommunication, AF Global Express, Kabul Farm, Creative Vision, ISA Afghanistan, and ABC, which is the Afghan Business Council of Dubai. They have set up their booths outside of this hall in the main lobby, which you're more than welcome to visit and view their displays. And we have the table set up for the one-on-one session. We will reconvene at 7 o'clock again for the gala dinner and for the gala event. Thank you.
Welcome back for those that you've been with us all the sort of throughout the day. I hope you've enjoyed everything so far. And for those who just arrived, we are more than happy to have you. We are glad to have you. And this part of the evening, I would like to personally now thank everybody for being here and welcome you. And it gives me a great pleasure to actually see the number of people that we have here in this Canada-Afghanistan Business Council's first conference, which we've emphasized again and again to say that this is and will be a bridge of opportunity for those who would like to invest in Afghanistan and for those Afghans who would like to invest in Canada. We have described and make an emphasis on the role that we will be the bridge and also the source for information how to do business in Afghanistan as well as that of Canada. And we've mentioned already about tremendous opportunities that are in Afghanistan as well as in Canada, but mainly in Afghanistan because it's a growing country, and I don't think once you go there, you will never look back. At this time, without, as they say, further ado or going forward, I would like to introduce the first guest of honor and speaker that will speak to you this evening. And that is His Excellency Omar Samad, who took his posting as Ambassador of Afghanistan to Canada in September he's been here since September 2004. As of July 2008, he's also designated as non-resident Afghan Ambassador of Republic of Chile. Prior to his arrival to Canada, he was the spokesperson for Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Afghanistan and as Director General in charge of several departments for 3 years. He was born in Afghanistan, studied in France, Afghanistan, and United States. He has earned his master's degree in international relations at Fletcher School in the United States. He also earned a BA degree in communication and international relations at the American University in Washington, D.C. His Excellency Samad has had numerous engagements in terms of being an instrumental in an individual that has helped Afghanistan throughout the time, and he has been he has represented Afghanistan in numerous conferences, including reconstruction conferences in Tokyo, in Berlin, at UN General Session, and numerous to mention actually. Mr. Samad is fluent in French, English, and of course Farsi, Dari. And without any further ado, I would like to ask His Excellency Omar Samad to share the podium with us. Thank you.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. بسیار زیاد تشکر برادر گرامی آقای فرهمند. هموطنان گرامی، خواهران برادران افغان، من بسیار زیاد خوش هستم و جای مسرت است برای ما و همکارای ما سفارت که با ما اینجا هستند که امشب ما در این تالار مجلل در تورنتو باز هم با شما حضور به هم میرسانیم و از نزدیک یک تصادف و یک فرصت بسیار مهمه تسجیل میکنیم. من فکر میکنم که یکی دو سه سال پیش اصلا تصور نمیشد که یک نهاد نو افغانی به این سرعت انکشاف پیدا کنه، ریشه بگیره در جامعه افغانهای کانادا. Mr. Halian, don't worry, I will switch to English soon. ولی شما تانستین که این کار انجام بتین، بالخصوص امین نهاد در پالوی دیگر نهادهای افغانهایی که در تورنتو و در سراسر کانادا در خلال 20-25-30 سال گذشته تشکیل شدن. شما هم در خلال 1.5-2 سال توانستین که این اتحادیه و این شورای تجارتی و این بزنس کانسل سرپا استارت کنین و در خدمت جامعه افغانی قرار بتین و از این طریق شما بتونین مصدر خدمت برای کشور آباییتان، وطن مشترک ما شما و کشور فعلیتان که کانادا هم است شما انجام بتین. این واقعا جای افتخار است برای من باعث یک افغان و باعث نماینده حکومت و دولت افغانستان که میبینم که افغانهای ما قادر شدن در خلال یک فرصت بسیار کوتاه و همچو یک دستاورد بزرگ نائل شوند. من ایره بر شما تبریک میگم، برای اعضای شورا ایره تبریک میگم و امیدوار هستم که شما بتونین که فعالیت‌هایتان گسترش بدین، امکاناتی را که در دسترستان است ایره در خدمت جامعه قرار بدین و مخصوصا از این امیدوار هستم که مردم افغانستان مستفید شده بتونن. هدف نهایی امی است که به هر رقم و به هر طریقی که میشه روابط دو جانبه که بین کانادا و افغانستان وجود داره، خواه از طریق فعالیت‌های فرهنگی، خواه از طریق فعالیت‌های سیاسی، خواه از طریق فعالیت‌های تجارتی و سرمایه‌گذاری و امثال هم انکشاف پیدا کنه و شما امروز یک رکن عمده از این انکشاف هستین. ما از دوستای گرامی که از راههای دور آمدن و مدت‌های دیر شده بود که با اونا ندیده بودم، بالخصوص برادر گرامی آقای بیات، از دیدن شما هم بسیار زیاد خوش هستیم که شما قدم رنجه کردین و به کانادا آمدین، ملکی که خزانش هم قشنگ است، تابستانش هم بد نیست، ولی خدا شما را در اینجا در زمستان نبیاره. خب دیگه من از اینجا کس میگه دیدین زود تیر شدم که نظیر جان گیر نکنن، مصاحبه در اینجا انجام ندن، ولی من میفهم که اینجا انتظار کرامگپی را دارن. خب به هر حال من از این که دوستایی که از افغانستان، از دبی و از ایالات متحده آمدن و افغانایی که از خود از این منطقه هستن و از دیگر شهرهای کانادا، من باز هم از این که این فرصت میسر شده به خوش هستم و من یقین کامل دارم که شما در امور کارهای فعلیتان موفق خواهد بدین. سفارت افغانستان و من یقین دارم که جنرال کنسولگری افغانستان در تورنتو در خدمت شما هستند. ما همیشه این گپ زدیم در محافل افغانا و ما این یک گپ تعارفی نیست، یک گپی است که به عقیده دارم، چون سفارتخانه افغانستان، سفارت‌های و نمایندگی‌های سیاسی افغانستان خانه افغان‌ها هستند و خانه شما است و شما از امکاناتی که ما در دست داریم شما باید استفاده کنین برای از اینکه برای رونق دادن کارهایتان و زندگیتان در اینجا و ارتباطاتتان با افغانستان از وسایل دولتی هم استفاده کنین. لذا دروازه‌های سفارتخانه‌ها و بالخصوص سفارت افغانستان در اتاوا و کنسولگری برای شما باز است، همیشه باز است و هر موضوعی که باشه ما قسمی که همیشه گفتیم میتونین با ما مطرح کنین و تا جایی که ما بتونیم کمک میکنیم، تا جایی که بتونیم مشوره میتیم و این کار ما شاهد ازی بودیم که 4 سال بارها انجام شده و صورت گرفته. به هر حال I will now switch to the beautiful language of English because of our guests who are here from various parts, and especially I'm very happy to see Mr. Halihan and Mr. Wong here, both good friends of Afghanistan. I have known them for many years. Both are playing critical roles in strengthening the relations that we have with Canada and Afghanistan. And I'm very happy that you could make it. I know that you're all very busy, and congratulations on a successful elections in Canada. I'm sure that the outcome will further benefit Afghanistan and Canadian relations, and there is a lot of work to be done in the years to come between these two countries. So welcome, and I look forward until I am here on assignment to continue to work with you in the Embassy of Afghanistan, which has very good relations with the Government of Canada at all levels, and with the Parliament of Canada, and with civil society in Canada, and with media in Canada, and with NGOs in Canada. We have established very widespread relationships with the Canadian people, and I know that each one of you also have your own networks of relationships with Canada, because you are now a part of Canada, and I believe that this is a testimony to the fact that Afghans in Canada today are doing well and they're successful, and you, and each one of you, is also considered as an envoy and ambassador of Afghanistan in this country, because you represent your culture, you represent your people, and you represent your backgrounds, in a country that you left under difficult circumstances. So the fact that in a multicultural society you are striving is not only a testimony to your perseverance and your courage and your vision, but also a testimony of what this country has offered you. I am sure that during this afternoon's sessions, you must have addressed some of the technical matters in terms of building up relationships between Afghanistan and Canada and the sectors of trade, investment, and business. But I just want to spend a few minutes giving you a little bit of a highlight of where we are today and what are the areas that are being worked on in order to expand and further assure success. It's a very new area of work. So far, everything that has been done on a bilateral, formal basis. There has been very little trade between the two countries, little investment, but I know that there is potential for more investment. I meet with Canadian investors, I meet with Canadian businesses who come to the embassy, or I meet them when I visit cities, other cities, and I know that there is the interest and the eagerness to do more in Afghanistan. And all we have to do, of course, is to provide the right environment and the right frameworks for Canadian businesses and Afghan Canadian businesses to enter the Afghan market and for Afghan businesses and investors to enter the Canadian market. It is going to be a long-term proposal. It is not going to happen overnight. There are many obstacles on the way of this initiative. The first obstacle, of course, you all know, is the security situation. Business wants to strive in a relatively secure and stable environment. And Afghanistan, unfortunately, is still grappling with the challenge of stability and security. But there are also opportunities in unstable, insecure environments. And I believe that for those businesses that are risk adverse and that can have the courage to go in a society like Afghanistan or any other post-conflict nation, or even in societies where still there is some element of conflict, that they will take the risk, but the gains will be much greater for them in the long run. Now, of course, we have to do everything possible to mitigate risk as well as provide the relative environment that is required for them. And that is not only in terms of security, but it's in terms of many other issues that I will go over very quickly. In essence, a relatively stable macroeconomic environment is being worked on in Afghanistan as we speak. And a number of steps have been taken to foster trade and investment. Current reform is going on, and inflation is low in Afghanistan, and the currency, the new Afghani, which came back into existence about 6 years ago, has been very stable and strong, especially in comparison to our neighboring countries' currencies. And so this has helped our fiscal discipline in Afghanistan. At the same time, the structure of Afghanistan economy has changed little. You know, it is almost the same structure that existed 40, 50 years ago. And that is a problem. And the Afghan government, with the private sector, is working hard to change that. Some 80 to 90% of economic activity, of course, in Afghanistan is in the agricultural sector. And we know, unfortunately, that the agricultural sector is dominated by the opium sector. And the opium business is actually a major driving force of the Afghan economy. And this is something that we really have to tackle within the next few years. It is not going to be resolved in a year or two, but it has to be resolved if we are to fight for a clean government, if we are to take strong anti-corruption measures, and if we are going to make sure that the Afghan people can have a legitimate economy, legitimate jobs, and prospects for opportunities. Because an opium economy is the wrong way to go. There has been significant progress on the financial sector of Afghanistan. I mean, just only 3 years ago, the banking sector, the private banking sector almost did not exist. Today, you have a number of private banks alongside former state-owned banks in Afghanistan that now are either privatized or still state-owned but are reformed. And I think that this is a major achievement for our country. At the same time, you all know, and I think that we have a guest from Kabul, from ISA, that ISA was established several years ago and has played a major role in being a clearinghouse for initial investment of a certain amount in Afghanistan. And so small to mid-sized businesses can now go to one place in order to register, in order to set up shop, instead of having to go to 15 different bureaucratic offices and face all kinds of problems. And so ISA has been a successful initiative, and we hope that it will grow and also be able to deal with larger scale investments in Afghanistan. The Afghan government has taken many steps, of course, to improve business, but much more remains to be done, particularly in terms of removing barriers and also improving infrastructure. I mean, I don't have to tell you that without infrastructure, and this is something that I always mention to my friends from SIDA and to the ministers here and to the parliamentarians, that Afghanistan cannot be rebuilt efficiently without having to work hard on infrastructure, whether it's roads, whether it's railroad, whether it's telecom, whether it's bridges, whether it's airports, whether it's medical facilities, and all of these infrastructures that are absolutely necessary for the economic growth of a country. Afghanistan needs investment in that area, because just imagine, how would an investor in any field come into a country like Afghanistan where there is no electricity? Without power, energy, generation, in a country that is abundant with water, if nothing else, with wind, with sun, the economy of the country is not going to grow. People will not find jobs, and we will have a weak economy that will still, unfortunately, be dependent on illicit items such as opium, smuggling, and other things. So we need to work as a prerequisite, and the international community has to help us. And I'm happy to see that at the Paris conference, there was a major stress on infrastructure building in Afghanistan, especially in terms of agriculture and power generation. Those are two items that form, in my opinion, the backbone of Afghanistan's future economy. So we need to work hard on those, and we need to make sure that the sources of funding are sustainable, that we can reach a certain point where we can take care of these issues ourselves. There are risks involved, as I said, in Afghanistan, and so the government has put in with the World Bank and with other financial institutions around the world, has put together certain mechanisms to mitigate risk and to enable the investors and the traders and the businesses to be able to secure their investments in Afghanistan. Because in any country, money that flows in has to feel secure. If it does not feel secure, and that people think that they're going to lose it and not get any return from it, they will not invest. We need to make sure that we enable an environment that is conducive to low risk in Afghanistan. I am a very strong, as I mentioned, proponent of increasing focus on agribusiness in Afghanistan. I mean, we have the best fruit in that part of the world. We have the best vegetables. We have the best dried fruits in that part of the world. And I just learned yesterday that Afghanistan's export facility, which is an independent agency that was formed just a couple of years ago, in an international conference just this week, earned the gold medal for promoting exports in The Hague. So any initiative taken by Afghan private or public sector to increase trade, exports, and of course imports that we need and not the imports that we don't, because we have a problem right now with our trade balance. Even though trade has increased by many, many folds, but it is mostly an import-based trade, and most of it is re-exported to our neighboring countries. So we need to work on that. But agribusiness means not just giving the farmers the tools. It also means water management. It also means irrigation. It also means processing techniques. It also means sorting, grading, packaging, and quality control. So all of these are part of the chain, or part of the chain that is required to be put in place for us to be competitive. Afghanistan has to start competing, first regionally and then internationally. It is going to take time, but I am sure that in certain sectors we can do very, very well. And I think that the international community has markets that will attract and want Afghan products, and there will be, of course, things that Afghans will need from the overseas that will come into the Afghan market. And I have to say that the more Canadian products can flow into Afghanistan, the better, and the more Afghan products can flow into Canada, the better also. And one of the issues that we are working on with the Canadian government is to make sure that if there are any ways to remove certain tariffs and barriers, that we should do it. Now, Canadians are interested in one very important sector in Afghanistan that is a very promising sector for the future of Afghanistan, and that is, of course, the mining and natural resources sector. A Canadian company, very well-known company, actually did the bidding, was part of the bidding that took place for the copper mines and fields. They came in second, unfortunately, and as we know, the Chinese company won. But that is an indication that people in Canada, companies and corporations in Canada, are watching what is happening. And today, the embassy, every time that we receive a new tender that is being put out by the Ministry of Mines in Afghanistan, we send it through to the Canadian companies, and we post it on our website, and we let people know that there are opportunities, whether it's gold, whether it's coal, whether it's oil, gas, and many other natural resources that Afghanistan is endowed with, to make sure that the Canadian corporations are aware of it. So this is going to be the future, in my opinion, of Afghanistan. I think that in the future you will see, and I hope that we will see both agriculture being the backbone still, and the mining and natural resources sector being other backbone of Afghan economy. I'm not going to go into details of what this means, but we have been told that the reserves of many minerals and other types of resources are very large and very much unexploited to this day. At the end, I would like to address a new phenomena that is happening in Afghanistan, and I'm sure that our friends who have come from there, including my dear friend Oy Bayat, knows about two new institutions that have been formed. And these two institutions are, one is semi-independent of the government, but is reporting to the government and directly to the president, and the other is set up as a corporation, as a company that is funded by donors. And these two entities, their goal is to facilitate investment and business transactions in Afghanistan, but also to remove all the barriers and hindrance that exists in the system. Our system is an antiquated system. We've inherited a system that is 40, 50 years old, and it has gone through so many different phases of political turmoil. And so the system needs to be, first of all, reformed. And these two institutions, one is called the PSEC, which is the Private Sector Enabling Commission, and the other one is AICF, which is the Afghanistan Investment Facility. Both of these are working parallel to each other, but they are several separate entities. They have come into being only in the past 6 months, and PSEC, its function is to look at all the different problems that exist for business in Afghanistan, whether it's within a ministry, whether it's with an agency or an individual or a portfolio or with the laws of the country, and report it to the president and take corrective action. AICF, its mission, it's basically to facilitate through investment the removal of hindrance and barriers. It is a very innovative function. One of its board members was in Ottawa last month, and I took them to meet with our Canadian friends in different agencies, including Mr. Halihan's boss, Mr. Mulroney, and he gave a very interesting expose of what this is all about. The British government is funding this to the tune of almost $60 million. The Americans have shown an interest. Hopefully the Canadians will show a little bit of interest, and others. But this is a $100 million company with a board, with accountability, with transparency, but it's not for profit. It's a non-profit company whose job is to remove barriers in Afghanistan. Anywhere that it finds it, it is going to look for a solution, and it's going to fund the solution, and is going to work with the government to do so, and the international community. So these are very, very important initiatives that have been taken, and I think that they will change the face of business in Afghanistan over the next year or two. So this is very good news, and so it's always good to end one's speech with good news, because usually in Afghanistan we have a lot of bad news, and I'm going to end it on a positive note tonight. And once again, I want to thank everyone for working so hard to put this together. I want to thank our friends who have come from long distances. I want to thank our Canadian friends who I know are also working very hard on this file, which is the most important foreign policy file for Canada in many, many, many decades. And at the end of the day, we all want to be successful.